Hi, this is my Castle Crashers tier list video. I'll be ranking the DLC characters. So let's start with the absolute worst, in my opinion. I think is Alien. The reason why is you can't switch his weapon. You're stuck with this really bad weapon. I don't think it has any stats, and it just sets him on fire. And that's actually a downside because sometimes the fire can break the juggle and they'll just fall out of it. And his splash magic doesn't do much damage against bosses. It's really just not a great character. Okay, next is actually going to be the new character, Painter Jr. I think he's super cool looking. Unfortunately, he kind of sucks. The main reason and kind of only reason is you can't control his splash magic. Like, it doesn't fire from where your character is. It just goes across the map randomly. That's a pretty huge downside. Like, it makes it pretty unusable. But the starting sword is good. I mean, 7 magic is crazy. Okay, the next character is Grey Knight. He's just another Arrow Rain character, but the thing with him is the elemental infusion. I think most characters do around 200 damage, and I believe his only does around 80, which is really bad. Alright, and that's actually it for F tier. For D tier, I think the blacksmith. You can use his splash attack to, knock over the enemies, and you can do it in the air, so you can stay pretty safe while you do it. But it's just not that great with the splash attack. You can't do much damage to bosses. Next is Hattie. His splash attack is basically a Arrow Rain reskin. Except it does take a while to come out. That's kind of the only reason. And then following that is just going to be all the Arrow Rain characters. So give me 1 second. Alright, and actually, these two have bombs. I think it's slightly worse than not having bombs because they don't travel in a straight line. It just makes it like slightly harder, in my opinion. And I think Barbarian is like slightly worse than these other Arrow Rain characters. Alright, for C tier, I think it's going to be Beekeeper. Beekeeper is basically another Arrow Rain reskin. However, the reason I think he's better than the other Arrow Rain characters is his bees basically shoot from the ceiling. So, bosses like the boss at the end of the Lava World level, just because the sock puppet is up in the air, it makes it a lot easier to use your magic against that boss. There's a few more bosses that it helps with, but I don't know them off the top of my head. Alright, next is the King. King is hard to rank because his splash attack doesn't do any damage. So, bosses are going to take longer, but the fact that he can heal whenever he wants, it's going to take a while to heal, granted, but, being able to heal between waves is pretty helpful. Especially for insane mode, or if you're struggling with it. Next up is Orange Knight and Green Knight. These two are basically the same. Reason being, in the new DLC, they changed Green Knight's weird heavy attack to be the same as the rest of the other characters. Their splash magic, it's pretty good. It has pretty long range. Their main downside is their elemental infusion. I think you can stun lock, but for the most part, it's going to be worse because it does less damage than the regular 200-ish damage. And the reason Orange Knight is above is, I believe, poison does less damage over time. And actually following that is going to be the Fire Demon. They both do fire. Fire Demon has a much better splash attack, but again, he has the same elemental infusion, and it really just does low damage. Alright, now for B tier, this actually might be a little controversial, but I'm going to put Red Knight in B tier. The reason is, he can be very helpful if, you're not as good at the game. You're still kind of learning how to juggle and whatnot. So it can be helpful on levels like the Necromancer level. You just electrify all the enemies. I mean, you are going to get a higher DPS if you were to just juggle. But, it's an easier alternative, and it does decent damage to bosses. I don't think it's as good as some in C tier, but it's pretty good. Next is the Ninja. There isn't much to say about him. He just has a good splash magic. Does pretty good damage to bosses. And following that is the Brute and Snaky. They have very similar splash attacks. However, I think these two do more damage. Alright, and that's it for B tier. In A tier, it's gonna be, I forgot his name, the Cultist and the Skeleton. Same character. Again, it's very similar to the ones I just ranked, but I think it's slightly better. Sorry, I forgot to rank Necromancer. I think he's above Red Knight. I did forget to mention Red Knight also has a weird elemental infusion. It does less damage, so yeah. Anyway, A tier. I think Pink Knight. Pink Knight is basically, I think, a worser version of the Blue Knight. They shoot rainbows, really long range, but instead of freezing the enemies, it just stuns them. So really nice for crowd control. What's especially nice is the splash attack doesn't flinch beefies, and what that means is they won't grab you and throw you across the map. A pretty good character in my opinion. Next is, I think, the Fencer and the Saracen in S tier. Sorry, not Saracen, Industrialist. Same character, same magic. It shreds bosses. Their magic is really good for most of the bosses in the game, and a lot of the enemies too. And what's nice as well, as a little bonus, is the splash attack hits behind you a little bit. So it keeps you safe while you're using it on the ground, mostly. And next, I'm actually going to do the Saracen. Saracen is interesting. There's a lot of weird stuff you can do with the tornado. Like a lot of tech. It's a very good character at a very high skill ceiling. There's a lot you can do involving juggling. And you can land safer using the tornado. You can get more damage in with just juggling. It keeps you relatively safe when you're using it on the ground as well. I think it can carry heavyweights. A lot of this the bear can do as well, but the bear just does it better. I'll get to that. And the Saracen also has their magic projectile is a sandstorm. It's like this huge thing that basically knocks back the whole screen. It's got a huge hitbox, so it's really good for when there's a lot of enemies on screen. Alright, after that, I think I'll do Ice Knight and Eskimo. I think Ice Knight is better because you can use those ice crystals in the air versus Eskimo, who only has snowballs. Yeah, using the ice crystals in the air, just keeps you safer. But yeah, being able to freeze enemies is really nice. It's great for insane mode. Not so much bosses, but it's not a huge deal when the magic is that good on enemies. And they have a really interesting elemental infusion. It only does around 100, but it freezes enemies in place. So it's really nice for just wiping out beefies and I guess just all the enemies that there are. And yeah, I think Bear is the best character. Unlike the Saracen, the Bear has a slightly faster hitting tornado, meaning you can actually do way higher DPS juggles. Now granted, I think it is really hard to learn, but once you get it down, I think it's like very, very good. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you agree or disagree on anything. And bye.